Honestly, Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country. And the moral of that tale is, yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to the right. At its worst, Canada is what American voters think happens when there's no one putting a check on extreme wokeness. The far left, which always like to use, well, Europe does it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work on this one anymore. Or on immigration. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanked.
Bill Maher usually does not spend much time taking shots at other countries, but when Democrats start drifting into fantasy, somebody has to snap them back to reality. Ever since Donald Trump returned to the White House, the left has once again become obsessed with the idea of escaping to Canada, as if America's polite northern neighbor is some flawless progressive paradise. Bill Maher just took that fantasy apart piece by piece. So what exactly did he say about Canada that has progressive squirming? So if you are ready for the full breakdown, hit subscribe and let us get straight into it.
If we want to save our country, we should follow the advice good liberals have given for decades and learn from other countries. Especially those beacons of progressivism like Canada, England, and Scandinavia. And I agree we should, as long as we're honest about the lessons we're learning, and as long as we're up to date on the current data, such as the unemployment rate in the US is 3.8%, and in Canada it's 6.1%. And of the 15 North American cities with the worst air pollution, 14 are in Canada. I'm not citing these stats because I have it out for Canada. I love Canada and its people and always have. But I hate zombie lies. Zombie lies.
Bill Maher did not ease into it. He came out firing right away. He went after one of the left's most beloved myths, Canada, as the noble, civilized, morally superior sanctuary the Democrats have been romanticizing for years, and honestly, that narrative has been begging for demolition. How many times have Americans been lectured by progressive politicians who talk about Canada like it is some fully operational utopia? Bernie Sanders has spent years holding up Canada's healthcare system like it is the gold standard, using it to shame the United States as callous and broken. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has praised Canada's social programs in the same breath, pushing the idea that America is hopelessly behind. These talking points have been reheated so many times they have become political leftovers. Bill Maher calls them what they are: zombie lies, old ideas, stale assumptions, recycled mythology dressed up as compassion and used to make America, especially under Trump, look barbaric by comparison. But the moment he starts unpacking the record, the whole performance begins to wobble.
There's only one problem with thinking everything's better in Canada. It's not. Not anymore, anyway. Last year, Canada added 1.3 million people, which is a lot in 1 year, the equivalent of the US adding 11 million migrants in 1 year. And now they're experiencing a housing crisis even worse than ours. And we're sleeping in tents. The median price of a home here is $346,000. In Canada, converted to US dollars, it's $487,000. If Barbie moved to Winnipeg, she wouldn't be able to afford her dream house, and Ken would be working at Tim Hortons.
Then Bill Maher turns his attention to one of the left's most carefully disguised fixations: open borders. Democrats almost never say it plainly, but critics have argued for years that their instincts, rhetoric, and policy preferences all point in the same direction: more openness, less enforcement, and a constant instinct to moralize anyone who objects. America watched that debate intensify during the Biden presidency, especially when Kamala Harris was handed the border portfolio and opponents accused her of treating it like a political inconvenience rather than a national emergency. That is when Bill Maher pivots to Canada and brings up numbers he says should make people nervous. Canada absorbed over 1 million immigrants in a single year, and Bill Maher's argument is that the consequences hit hard and fast. Housing did not just get tighter, it became punishing. Rents surged, home ownership drifted further out of reach for ordinary Canadians. The economic pressure became impossible to ignore. His point is not subtle. When immigration happens at a scale this large without serious restraint, the stress does not stay abstract. It lands directly on real people trying to afford a place to live.
Because of mortgage debt, Canada has the highest debt-to-GDP ratio of any G7 nation. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. So does their vaunted healthcare system, which ranks dead last among high-income countries in access to primary healthcare and ability to see a doctor in a day or two. And it's not for lack of spending. Of the 30 countries with universal coverage, Canada spends over 13% of its economy on it, which is a lot of money for free health care.
And that leads Bill Maher straight into another sacred progressive talking point. Universal healthcare politicians like Bernie Sanders and even figures such as New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani never miss a chance to wave Canada's healthcare system in America's face like it is the holy grail of enlightened government-free healthcare, they say, as if the word free settles every serious question before it can even be asked. Bill Maher is not buying that sales pitch. He points to the enormous sums Canada pours into healthcare every single year and then lands the blow. Despite all that spending, he argues Canada still performs poorly on key measures of access and quality compared with other developed nations, and on some healthcare access indicators it lands near the bottom among its peers. That is the punchline the left never wants to dwell on. Free is not automatically better. A price tag of zero means very little if people still struggle to get timely care and the system keeps under-delivering after swallowing a massive share of the economy.
I'm not saying Canada still isn't a great country. It is, but those aren't paradise numbers. If Canada was an apartment, the lead feature might be America adjacent. And if America was a rental car, Canada would be America or similar. And again, honestly, Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't, because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country. And the moral of that tale is, yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to...
But Bill Maher is not finished. Then he walks straight into the minefield that makes the modern left instantly defensive. Wokeness, as if housing pressure, immigration strain, and healthcare underperformance were not already enough to crack the Canada fantasy. Bill Maher argues there is another piece of this story that rarely makes it into the glowing headlines. Canada has not merely flirted with progressive ideology in his framing, it has gone all in. It has institutionalized it, rewarded it, and embedded it deep inside the culture and the machinery of government. This is no longer just about kindness, inclusion, or basic civility. Bill Maher frames it as a form of ideological excess that is stretched far beyond moderation and into enforcement, and once he gets specific, the temperature rises fast. That is when the conversation becomes deeply uncomfortable for the people who built entire political brands around treating Canada like a moral compass.
In politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third grade.
And there it is in Bill Maher's telling. Canada did not just entertain woke ideology, it moved it into the house, handed it the keys, and let it start rearranging the furniture. The examples he brings up are not presented as fringe stories or isolated flare-ups. He treats them as evidence of a broader culture shaped by an ideology that, in his view, too often puts feelings ahead of facts and orthodoxy ahead of honest debate. Try having a plain, rational conversation on certain cultural issues, he suggests, and watch how fast it turns into a ritual of moral intimidation. That is his warning. The woke agenda, as he frames it, is not merely irritating or excessive. It can become corrosive. It can distort institutions, chill open discussion, and make serious disagreement feel almost forbidden. And the most politically potent part of the argument is this: America does not appear to be learning from Canada's visible mistakes. If anything, parts of the American left seem determined to import the same ideas with even more enthusiasm.
Too, with all the other good place countries in direct opposition to America's choice to affirm children's wishes on switching gender, no matter the age or psychiatric history. The far left, which always like to use, well, Europe does it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work on this one anymore. Or on immigration. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking, and it has Europe's highest rate of gangland killing.
Bill Maher then widens the lens by dragging Sweden into the discussion, and the parallel is impossible to miss. Sweden, once viewed as one of the most orderly and stable societies in Europe, opened its doors to large-scale immigration over the course of a decade, wrapped in the same humanitarian rhetoric that the American left loves to celebrate. Bill Maher describes the results as deeply troubling. He points to concerns about crime, integration, and social cohesion in a country that was once held up as a model of stability, and then he swings the spotlight back to the United States, this time toward education. For years, progressive ideology has been tightening its grip on American classrooms, but critics argue the Biden era poured fuel on that trend by pulling back from accountability, including moves away from standardized testing and other common benchmarks. Bill Maher's logic is brutally direct. No standards means less accountability. Less accountability means lower expectations, and lower expectations are exactly how a country ends up training students to feel affirmed instead of prepared.
The result is that the far-right parties are in the government now there for the first time, to which liberals say blaming immigrants for the rising crime rate is racist. Yeah, but is it true?
The romantic idea that people are somehow fundamentally transformed the second they step onto American or Canadian soil is not compassion, it is fantasy. Culture, values, habits, and behavior are shaped over years, often decades, sometimes generations. They do not simply evaporate at a border crossing because a politician wants to sound morally elevated. Bill Maher presents that as common sense, not extremism. His point is not that immigration is inherently bad, it is that immigration without vetting, without limits, and without seriousness creates real pressure for real communities, and pretending otherwise does not make those pressures disappear, it just delays the reckoning. And from there, Bill Maher turns cultural criticism into a political warning aimed straight at Democrats. Keep dismissing legitimate public concerns as ignorance or prejudice. Keep pretending voters are too unsophisticated to notice what is happening around them, and you will keep losing elections. The electorate has already started sending that message loudly.
We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century.
Then Bill Maher takes on yet another ideological obsession simmering inside the Democratic Party. Socialism, a growing and increasingly vocal segment of the left, has become openly enchanted with the idea that capitalism is the root of injustice and socialism is the moral upgrade America supposedly needs. They talk as if dismantling the market and embracing a socialist framework would usher in fairness, dignity, and prosperity, all while airbrushing history into oblivion. Venezuela, Cuba, the Soviet Union. Time after time, socialist experiments have collapsed into repression, scarcity, economic failure, and mass human suffering, yet the true believers always reach for the same excuse: that was not real socialism, the wrong people ran it, the next version will finally work. Bill Maher cuts through that academic daydreaming with the verdict: history has already rendered again and again. Socialism does not keep failing because nobody has explained it well enough, it keeps failing because in practice it
one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
So there you have it. Bill Maher, a man the left has long treated as one of its own, just did what many Democratic politicians are too timid to do. He said the quiet part out loud. The broader case he lays out is that Canada is not the progressive paradise it has been advertised as for years. In several major areas, it looks less like a model and more like a cautionary tale: a housing crisis intensified by reckless immigration levels, a healthcare system endlessly praised despite weak outcomes, and Staggering cost and education culture warped by ideology and weakened standards, a brand of institutional wokeness that in Bill Maher's view makes honest discussion harder and harder by the day. And if Democrats keep refusing to absorb those lessons, if they keep clinging to socialist fantasies and border politics that voters no longer trust, then the ballot box will keep delivering the same brutal answer reality does not bend to. Ideology, it does not negotiate with wishful thinking, and as Bill Maher just demonstrated, sometimes the most damaging criticism comes from inside the house. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.